Hi there, it's Asia with the latest selection of the most challenging IELTS speaking Part 1 topics reported in recent exams. You'll hear sample answers and learn some useful vocabulary you can use to improve your answers. And I have an announcement to make. Now you can get all our sample answers and vocabulary on a variety of challenging topics used in real IELTS speaking exams in one convenient place, our new IELTS speaking library. You can become a member and for a small fee get all these materials in PDF and more. Let's get started! Here is the first topic. The examiner says something like, let's talk about writing by hand. Handwriting. That's something I hardly ever do. Do you? Let's look at 4 possible questions. Think about what the examiner is really interested in. Why do they ask these questions? Number 1. Do you prefer to write by hand or type on a keyboard? So the questions often start by encouraging you to talk about personal preferences or habits. Do you prefer? Do you like? Do you often or usually? My answer is, I would definitely say typing on a keyboard. I find it much better to write that way because it's easier to make changes and check over what I've written by scrolling up or down. And to be honest, my handwriting is a mess and my spelling is not that good either. So I love this spelling check on Word. And then there follows a question that goes into your past, asking you to talk about personal experiences. Some questions about the past start with, did you? Have you ever? When, what, how, where did you? Did you write a lot by hand when you were younger? Well, yeah, of course, at school. We had to write everything by hand right up until the last couple of years at high school, where you could hand in some projects done on the computer. In fact, when we were about 9 or 10 years old, we had a teacher who tried to show us how to have beautiful handwriting. What's the word? Calligraphy. That's it. Then, the other 2 questions are often more speculative. They are asking for your general point of view or opinion about the future. For example, is good handwriting important? Well, that teacher I mentioned thought so. I don't know. I mean, maybe in some jobs where you need to write clearly, it's important. A doctor, maybe? But nobody can understand their handwriting. On the other hand, in some cultures, Japan or China, for example, writing by hand is like a form of art, so I guess it all depends. Or the next question. Do you think you will write by hand more or less in the future? Personally, I don't see myself writing much by hand in the future. Even short memos at work are going to be through texting. And in fact, it will be the smartphone we'll be using even more than a laptop or tablet to communicate in writing. And one thing I would like to use more is voice dictation. This answer looks perfect for the examiner to ask. Why? Because it makes life so much easier. I downloaded the app. All I have to do is speak, and it writes the doc for you. It saves time, and I believe I think better when I speak than when I write. Thinking about these 4 answers, your grammar will probably move from talking in the present in question 1 to the past in question 2 and then onto future and conditional forms by the 4th question. There is a progression from the easier to the more difficult. just as the speaking test itself becomes more demanding as we go from part 1 to part 2 and part 3. What about vocabulary? These answers are band 9. Although for band 7 your language can be simpler, your vocabulary should still be broad and varied and also show that you can handle some less common and idiomatic vocabulary. Some examples here are the follow-up answer to question 4, where we see makes life so much easier. It writes the talk for you. They may not appear so original, but believe me, the examiners do take notice of the way you use these common phrases in context. As for the other questions, yes, there are some good words and phrases to use when we talk about handwriting and compare it to using a keyboard, such as scrolling or calligraphy. To scroll is to move information on a computer or smartphone screen to read it. And calligraphy is the art of producing beautiful handwriting. For some special vocabulary associated with handwriting, I thought you may use these words. Your handwriting can be good or poor. If it's almost impossible to read, it's illegible. Make sure this word can't be used to describe your IELTS writing answers. And now let's look at another topic. Yes, let's talk about birthdays. I'm going to present 4 questions. Do they follow a similar pattern to the ones on handwriting? Moving from easier descriptive questions to more speculative ones? Listen to my answers and think. Are these answers long enough? Too long? Too short? Question number 1. What do you usually do on your birthday? I always try to celebrate with friends. We go out to a restaurant, or maybe I throw a party in my flat if my birthday falls on the weekend and I don't have to go to work the next day. And of course, I call my parents and chat. They live far away, so I don't get to see them on that day. I'm describing my birthday habits with all the verbs in the present tense. Vocabulary. When you go to a restaurant, you go out. If you organize a party, you throw a party. Notice how you say that your birthday falls on a certain day instead of just is. For example, great, this year my birthday falls on a Saturday, so I can have a big party without worrying about getting up early the next day. Or the dream birthday that doesn't happen often. Question number 2. What did you like about birthdays when you were a child? The parties. It didn't matter if it was my birthday or someone else's. There would always be a party with lots of games and a cake, and sometimes it would be outside, like in a park. Yes, past tense narrative, but notice how we use would. There would always be to mean something that happened regularly in the past. If we say there was always a party, it's correct, but it lacks the precision of meaning we get with would always be. The structure is repeated with sometimes it would be outside. We can use would to talk about repeated past actions that don't happen anymore. Question number 3. Is it important for you to celebrate your birthday? Yes, maybe because of all those great childhood memories. I mean, it's just another day really, but it's nice to have one day in the year when you feel special. Perhaps when I get old, I won't feel the same, of course. Examiners like to hear you use collocations or common word combinations accurately. So notice childhood memories, as well as expressions like, it's just another day. Next, which birthdays are more important to celebrate in your country? In Kazakhstan, when a boy or girl reaches the age of 18, it's very special. This is a kind of coming of age event where all the family and friends come together to celebrate. Coming of age is when a person reaches the age at which they have an adult's legal rights and responsibilities. It may be 18 or 21. So, were these answers long enough? Too long? Too short? I counted 1 minute 30 seconds. Is it good? In part 1, the examiner has a maximum of 5 minutes to check your ID and ask you a total of 11 questions on 3 topics. That's about 1.5 minutes per topic, exactly what we have. Of course, some answers can be shorter, some a bit longer. Generally, give an open answer to each question, but don't stress your examiner by talking too much. Another topic, names. It may be easy for you or not if that's not something you give much thought to. Question number 1. Does your name have a special meaning? I know that Asia is a name of Arabic origin and it's said to mean caring one. Or, I really don't know in fact. All I know is that my name, Carolina, is the female equivalent of Charles, but I have no idea if it means something special. Next. Who usually names babies in your country? Sometimes it's a family tradition. For example, my eldest brother was named after our grandfather on our father's side. My granddad was the first son, my brother too, and they call the first son David. But I know some people who choose names simply because they like them. So, someone can be named after a family member or a famous person. Who are you named after? And don't forget that your family has 2 sides. You can talk about your mother's side of the family and your father's side. Did your family have a nickname for you when you were a child? Yes, and they still call me by it. It's just Lina, because when I was small, I couldn't say my whole name, Carolina, so I would say Lina and everyone would laugh. That's where it started. Many people have nicknames. We can also talk about having a pet name, a name used to express great affection for someone. So maybe in this case, it's a pet name. The next question is, would you like to change your name? Actually, I was considering changing my name when I moved to the UK and found out that most people struggle to pronounce it. But it's a big decision. Your name becomes a part of you, something you identify yourself with so closely. Eventually, I decided against it. Again, about 1.5 minutes for a set of questions and answers. When you're practicing at home, use a timer to understand how much you should say. Aim for at least 5 minutes or a bit more. The next topic today is one where most of us would have plenty to say whether we like it or not. Cooking. How often do you cook? Quite a lot. I live by myself and I like to eat well, so I don't have much choice. I wouldn't say I was that good in the kitchen. I mean, more often than not, I make something simple like pasta or whatever, but I get by. We can see an effective use of good in the kitchen as a synonym of a good cook. Here, it's neither good or bad. I get by means I survive, I do alright. Here is another option. How often do you cook? Never. I'm hopeless and luckily I don't need to because my partner is a brilliant cook. Your partner is your husband or wife or a boyfriend, girlfriend you live with. It's a more polite word to talk about your or someone else's half without going into detail. To be a good cook is to cook very well. The next question is, when you were a child, did you help to prepare meals? Yes, my mother used to ask us to help set the table and help a bit in preparing salads and stuff when we were quite young, about 6 or 7. That was my brother and me. Later on, when I was a teenager, I used to do more. My mother really enjoyed cooking, so it was fun to help. Remember that to set the table means to place the plates, cutlery, dishes on the table. You can also say to lay the table. Question number 3. Do you think children should be taught cookery at school? Absolutely. I've heard that years ago, cooking classes at school were mandatory, at least for girls. But these days, that just doesn't happen. It's so important that kids learn practical things like how to cook. And not just girls, of course. Boys must learn as well. Cookery. It's in the question, not the answer. Cookery means the art and practice of cooking. We can talk about cookery lessons or classes. Most of us use cooking more often, and we see that in the reply. Something is mandatory if it must be done because of a law or rule. The next question is it important to know how to cook well? It all depends on the individual. If someone enjoys cooking, then yes, why not? The satisfaction and sense of achievement you can get from cooking incredible meals must be fantastic, as well as the pleasure it gives to other people. But I see it as something very personal, not as something important for your role in society. For this topic, it's probably a good idea to know what any special dishes in your culture are called in English, or at the very least, you should know how to describe them shortly. More generally, what helps most in the speaking test, especially in part 1 perhaps, is to always be yourself. Be natural. There is no need to try to impress the examiner with big fancy words or extra complex or formal sentences. There is nothing better than showing that you know your grammar, that your vocabulary is straightforward but specialized when it needs to be. And if you'd like to get sample answers and vocabulary to prepare to a variety of more challenging topics from real IELTS exams, you can get our new IELTS speaking library. And now I have to go because I've been invited to a birthday party and I promised to make a cake. Or was it a handwritten card? And what was the name of the birthday girl? Oh dear. Thank you so much for watching me today. Good luck with your preparation and your exam. Bye!